I'm here with Robb Nanus of the Awesome Foundation. Thank you so much for making the time. We're here in, what is the cafe that we're sitting in front of?
Preta Manger. I don't know if that's how you pronounce the second half of it. I think it's French. No, it's a British.
British, French?
It's a British cafe. I don't know, they're all over the city.
It's fancy.
They're good.
It's a chain.
They have good cookies.
They do have good cookies.
Harvest cookies.
So I have come to you. I wanted to meet you somewhere near Union Square. You were a busy, busy man. And grant giver as well as otherwise busy. So I just wanted to come to you and see if we could get a good recording out in the middle of the world. So thank you for meeting me.
Of course, I'm very, very happy to do so.
So I guess I've met you because I'll just talk about the background, how we got to know each other even vaguely, but we met because I just happened to go to a random sort of public meeting where people who had received the Awesome grant, which we'll get into what that actually is a little bit in a minute here, what they had done with it and how it had worked out, what it had done for their enterprises or their projects and their initiatives, and you were there as one of the grant makers. And it was kind of a really interesting egalitarian system that I had never really known very much about, and I had never just had this immediate kind of handshake access to people who were giving away the money for things they thought were important. So that was just such a direct access moment that I've just been intrigued ever since, and you have been so generous as to say I'll follow up and tell you about it. So, can you tell me about the Awesome Foundation and how you got involved in it?
Absolutely. So the Awesome Foundation was started about 8 or 9 years ago. A bunch of friends in Boston were interested in looking at alternative methods for using their money, donating their money, and they looked at a bunch of different methods, and they were unhappy with a lot of the different methods that they saw. They didn't really feel like their money was going to interesting projects, or projects that they didn't feel like their money was getting used well, and so they came up with this alternative method of what if we just all compiled our money monthly and gave it out to whoever we wanted to, and that way we were sort of ridding ourselves of the whole bureaucratic system of it all and just giving the money directly to who we wanted to give. And so they started the first chapter in Boston, and it was about 10 friends, and they each put in $100 a month to give out a $1,000 grant each month to somebody that they decided was doing something awesome and quote-unquote forwarding awesome in the universe. So,
forwarding awesome in the universe.
Yes, that's I think the log line on our website. And all of a sudden they got a lot of interest from people interested in the money, but they also got a lot of interest in people in different cities who said, "What is this? How do I start this?" And there are a lot of tech people. So they built a beautiful website and it looked very official. So people started inquiring about what it was, how did they get involved, could they start their own chapter, and
really it was like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Exactly. It was a bunch of friends, who just wanted to start this project, and it has now grown to something like 80 active chapters all around the world, everywhere from New York City to Boston to Seattle to a number of chapters in Africa, in the UK, in Asia. It's a very robust network, and we've given out over $1 million worth of grants.
Oh my God! I didn't realize it was that big.
Yeah, it's been going on. It's really an incredible thing, and what's amazing about it is that it's totally decentralized. There's no governing body. There is no rules. We have a internal Wikipedia, page that they've created that is some guidelines. But every chapter operates totally as they want to. It's up to them. If they give out $1,000, they give out $10,000. There's another chapter in New York that's run through the Harnish Foundation, which gives out $1,000 a week.
Oh, wow.
And they actually, last February, I think 2014, they gave out, during the month of February, $1,000 a day.
Why did they pick that month for that, do you know?
The Harnish Foundation does a lot of work with women's rights and sort of women-centric projects, and I believe that February is Women's Rights Month or something. I believe. I
thought it was Black History Month.
Maybe I don't remember.
No, it's okay.
I don't remember why. I just know that February was a big month for them last year. So all the chapters operate totally differently. Some of them are 20 people, some of them are 10, some of them do their grant process through public forums, some do them very privately over email. There's no sort of rhyme or reason. We let people do what makes the most sense for them. So that's in sort of a nutshell the Awesome Foundation.
So how did you come to get involved in it, and how did you decide that you wanted to be involved in it? Who told you about it? How did you learn about it?
Right. So I was, right when I moved to New York, I was working for an organization called Story Pirates. They're an education startup, and I was also simultaneously working for another organization called TurboVote, which is bringing the power of the internet to the voting process. They're a really amazing company, a nonprofit, I believe. And it turned out that somebody from TurboVote and somebody from Story Pirates were both a part of the Awesome Foundation, were trustees. And I'd heard about it through my friend who worked on the Story Pirates, but I ended up at it through TurboVote. They had a sort of Awesome Hours, which was just sort of a social gathering of people related to the Awesome Foundation in some sense. And I just went on a whim and really enjoyed the people that I was meeting first. I mean, it's a really incredibly diverse group of people that are trustees, people working in tech, in the arts, in education, in consulting, in law. I mean, it's just such a wide swath of people. And it was really nice. I work in the theater industry, and it was really nice to be meeting people in all sorts of different industries. And so that was the initial thing that was really exciting to me. But it was also exciting to me to see the types of projects that they were working on. And somebody coming from the arts world, the fundraising model in the arts world tends to give the bulk of the money to very large institutions. It's institutions that have been around for decades and do really traditional work. And it was fascinating to see this organization giving money, not necessarily in the arts world, but just giving money to people who were doing such unusual and what I thought were exciting projects, even if they didn't necessarily have as much impact per se. I was just really fascinated by the types of work that they were funding.
So do you have any examples, like types of work that you got really excited about? I mean, artwork is specifically if it went to an individual artist? Or...
I'm trying to think of something recently different. We did a LGBT magazine, online magazine for youth, and we've done. I know one of the first grants that they gave out in Boston was these giant hammocks. They were putting all around the city, and it was intended for the purpose of sort of encouraging community and people to sort of go outside and
use common space.
And it was sort of in a very silly, off-the-wall way that the city would never necessarily approve. It's too quirky, quote unquote, for them to necessarily approve. But for this, for $1,000, they could make this all happen. Or one of the ones they did in New York was something called Name Tag Day, where June 1st, 2 years ago, and they've done it now every year, they had volunteers all around the city handing out name tags. And it was intended to encourage people to talk to everybody around them. And in New York particularly, it's very easy to block out all the commotion around you and sort of sit on your phone or just only talk to people you know, listen to music. And they figured that if everybody around you had a name tag, you might actually engage in conversation with them. And so lots of sort of hacks to real world, hacks to community, hacks to sort of the conventional systems. And I found that really fascinating and exciting. I'm sure I'm missing lots of very other interesting
what? You're not going to talk about every single project
I know.
I
feel like I'm, of course, blinking on all the really great stuff that we've been able to give grants to. But so while I kept going to these kind of cocktail hours that weren't necessarily official, but they were through the Awesome Foundation, and there was one that was focused on discussing, it was right after Hurricane Sandy, and they were discussing, there was a lot of interest in doing something related to Sandy, and they had all these really important applications come in that were very important, but they didn't really know how to handle all of them. It was
urgent, I imagine.
Urgent, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we ended up creating a awesome Sandy chapter that was dedicated exclusively to Sandy relief. and I jumped on board for that. It was sort of a separate chapter from the New York chapter. And so that was kind of how I got actually fully involved in the foundation. And
so that really meant committing for a period of time that you would give $100 every month of your own free will to something that you all collectively, the group of 10 or 12 of you, decided you would do.
Exactly. So I did that with the Awesome San Diego chapter for about 6 to 8 months, and then at the end of that time, we realized there wasn't really as many applications coming in. We felt like that we had done what we needed to do, and ended up folding that chapter. But there were some openings on the New York chapter, so I ended up migrating over to the New York chapter, and I've been doing that now for about a year and a half.
So you have personally given away how much money through the Awesome Foundation now?
I guess probably somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000.
Okay.
Which is nothing. I mean, it's not crazy amount of money, but it's definitely something that I feel on a financial end. But I feel comfortable giving it away. It feels sort of like my donation. You know, a portion of my own expenses that I feel comfortable giving away for what I feel like are not charities, but causes that I think are important.
Right, and it kind of codifies it and gives you also this access to lots of other people from lots of other industries.
Yes.
And kind of a finger on the pulse of just all the applications that would come in.
Right. And I do believe, personally, that it's important to be giving a certain portion of your money to others. That no matter how little you have, you always can give something. And so this counts as part of that for myself.
Wow, that's
and a
wonderful.
consistent part of that.
I hope that everybody kind of gets that more and more. It's you know, of course, people will have that idea when they're a part of their church or their religious organization to tithe their money. But outside of that, it's not really something that is sort of discussed overtly and talked about. Like it's just something that is embedded in people's lives so much. It seems more that if you do that, if you do always allocate your money to give away to others, you don't necessarily even have a format or a place in which you can talk about it.
Totally.
It becomes such an invisible thing unless you have something like the Awesome Foundation where it can, you know, get a platform and a vessel and a tangible way to be, flowing out.
Absolutely. I took an intro to religion class in college, and I believe it was Hinduism, one of the philosophies is that you should be giving away 10% of whatever you make, you should be giving away. 10%, regardless of how much money you make, the 10% should be going back out to sort of charitable causes. And something about that always really stuck with me, that this sort of consistent percentage of no matter how much you have enough to give. And I'm not a particularly religious person, but that concept has always stuck with me, and I try to enact that in my daily life.
Did your parents have that as well, or was it really just a concept that you came to through that class in college?
I think my parents have always been very generous, but again, it's not something that we necessarily talk about. You know, that for me, I'm a very logical person and sort of regimented person, so that number, codifying it with a 10% felt like some strangely revolutionary in my mind. Like actually setting aside a certain percentage of your income for that is really important, or else you don't know how much you're giving. You'd be giving $10 a month and not really thinking about it, that that's literally 0.1% of your income or whatever, you know, but really setting aside this percentage of my income, that made a lot of sense to me just for my very logical side of my brain.
So the logical side of your brain embraces this and understands it very well. But and then you say you work in theater now.
Yes.
So what is that? I mean, when people think about who is giving money away, who are grant makers, who are donors, you envision these really rich people. You know, these people that have a lot. And to really break it down in these increments that people could actually understand. You know, $100 a month. I would like to also just talk about, you know, how do you make your living? What do you do? And you know, how is it that this is so attainable for you? Because I was really surprised to find out that it would be attainable for many, many, many people to be donors in the Awesome Foundation, as well as perhaps, you know, many artists to be applying for it because they have great ideas.
Right.
And you work in theater, so you're kind of on both ends of the giving spectrum, right?
Right. I'm both, and as a producer, which is primarily what I do, I'm often looking for money as well. So I'm sort of dealing with both ends of things simultaneously. So the first question I asked was, what do I do, or what?
Yeah, what do you do? And I mean, I guess, you have this very unique experience of being on both sides of this funding thing, but what is your job? What do you do to make this all possible?
Apologies, I just saw somebody in the window. I had to wave.
So
I work as an independent producer, which means, so for people who aren't in the sort of theater world, a producer is more or less sort of the CEO of a company. The company is a show. So a producer is in charge of everything from finding the cast and the creative team, developing the actual artistic work, dealing with budgets and finance and press and marketing and fundraising. I might have already said that, and sort of overseeing the entire project and acting as the manager and sort of the spearhead of spearheading the entire efforts. And so every project is a little different. Every project, what exactly the scope of my work is. Sometimes I do it by myself. Sometimes I do it with a different partner. Sometimes I'm hired by a company to do it. So that is the majority of my work, and I worked on everything from very small projects that were essentially a guy on a guitar to a piece with 500 singers at Baltimore City Concert Hall in LA, and everything in between. And I'm working right now on a show called Allegiance, which is by and with, or not by, but about and with George Takei of Social Media and Star Trek. His family was in the Japanese American internment camps, and the story is all about this family that is based on his own family persevering and working through the very sort of complex and traumatizing experience of going through Japanese American internment camps during World War II in America. It's a really uplifting and exciting and amazing story. But so that's coming to Broadway in the fall. So
wow.
That's sort of the whole, all sorts of different types of projects. How I make a living, I think, was your question. For a long time, the tricky thing with producing is that you generally only make money when you have a hit show running on, continuously.
Right.
So you don't usually get upfront fees per se. You just get a percentage of box office. So it's very hard. A lot of successful producers are people who come from money and are able to sort of support themselves in the interim. So there's both, they're able to support themselves, but they're also able, a huge part of producing is fundraising, and they often, those people who have access to...
Having a good Rolodex is so important.
Is huge as a producer. And I, though I don't want to say I come from, a destitute family, I don't have the means to just sort of live off my parents while I'm trying to build a career. I was very lucky early on to start working for a composer as his assistant who was very supportive of my producing career from more or less day one. He asked me what I wanted to do when I was interviewing for him, and I said producing, which was sort of true and sort of felt like an appropriate answer, and he said, great, you can produce things for me. And a month later, I ended up producing a workshop of a piece that I produced last October at Lincoln Center with Kristen Chenoweth and 120 Broadway singers, and sort of, he has been very much my biggest supporter in so many ways. And in essence, working for him has given me the flexibility to go and work on lots of other projects. So that, for the past two some years, was what was supporting me in a lot of ways. And lots of side gigs here and there, but that was kind of a consistent paycheck that was coming in, which was
almost as good as parents that have lots of money.
Exactly.
Supportive, pays you.
Right, and it was great because I was meeting people through that job, and he was always great about introducing me to his colleagues and treating me like I was an equal at the table rather than like an assistant, which is, I think, very unusual, and I can't speak to how important that was, both career-wise, but also just, I think, I don't want to say ego-wise, but sort of feeling like I was empowering me to feel like I could be a voice at the table, which I think often as a 26-year-old you're sort of told to sit in the back and not speak up. And so I that was a huge part of that. Now I've just started to accumulate enough side projects that I am able to support myself through those projects. I decided about 6 months ago that it was important for me to step away from just being an assistant, because while I was assistant, I both was his boss in a certain sense, producing a show of his, and also we started a production company together, so I was his business partner. So I was at once his boss, his employee, and his employer, his employee, and his business partner.
Right.
And I felt like it was time to rid myself of one of those things, and so I left the gig as his assistant and found him a new assistant, but continued to be his boss and his producing partner on many projects. And that was a very smooth transition, which I've been very lucky with also.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
That's really remarkable. Wow.
Was there other questions that I missed?
No, that was a wonderful, robust history
of my life.
Yeah,
sort of.
It's
the
good.
condensed version.
I mean, but also it just shows that, not coming from an extremely privileged family, you can still really, you can't just write your own ticket, but I mean, as people find you and know that you have drive and you have the desire to speak up and be at the table and say something and make your impact and also give back, when they see that reflected in the young person across the table from them, I think the response is very often very positive.
Right, absolutely. And it's been interesting being able to, a lot of people who I work with are a different generation. It's been really interesting to sort of bring...
You mean old people?
They're generally over the age of 50. They're not always, but a lot of producers are often, by the time you get there, you're in your 50s, where you're actually successfully producing it consistently. And it's been... I think I've been able to bring sort of a fresh perspective on things and a little bit more on the pulse of sort of the issues that are going on. And for me, that's a very... what excites me doing work, the type of work that excites me is work that I think people aren't necessarily doing otherwise. Things that are often sort of unproducible or not necessarily make the most sense or what would typically get produced. And I think...
So you like to just actively diversify that cultural voice.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. And the first show that I ever produced was a show written by two women and about a bunch of women, very odd women that I don't think often you see on stage or seen in entertainment. And I think through that experience I became very aware of sort of who gets produced and what gets produced, and had a lot of conversation with them and a lot of people who we were working to bring to help support the work, was how unusual that was. And it's made me very sensitive to the type of work that I can produce and knowing that I am a white male and therefore that is the reality of where I am as an individual, but that I have the power to support work of people who are not that. And I can't really change my situation, but I can help other people who aren't necessarily getting a voice.
Oh, and you can leverage your situation to help that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Knowing that is probably why I've been able to get as far as I have, and then hoping that I can then sort of bring up the people around me who aren't necessarily in my position.
Right. That's a perfect little quote to pull out and be like, aha, this is what he said. This is like wraps it all up, puts a bow on it right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, okay. So I have one question that I ask everyone.
Please.
When I say the word successful, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you?
For myself, or just in general, like a general definition of the word, or what do I feel like?
For yourself.
Well, I'll say generally success, I think, is somebody who I say successful, somebody who I feel like seems very at peace with where they are, and is sort of living the life that they want to live. To me, is successful. And I think that can mean so many different things, but I think that often a lot of people aren't able to live the life that they want to be living. And I think figuring out a way to do that is for me, has always been a goal. And I think a lot of the past couple of years have been trying to figure out what that is. What is the life I want to live? And what do I want to be doing? For me, success, I think, is being able to have in terms of the work that I'm doing, being able to have a voice, being sort of in control of what I'm doing and what I'm working on and who I'm working with, and feeling like the work that I'm making is having impact on people. That the most important thing, both the creators and the audience that's going to see it. I am not interested in work that people leave and just forget about. That if you're not thinking about it the next day, then I don't feel like the work has been successful. Because
so you're not successful. You have not succeeded.
You have not succeeded in what you're doing, or you're not just doing work that is having impact. And funny enough, that's a huge part of our conversation with the Awesome Foundation. Is that whenever people ask us what types of work that we like to grant, I go back to the word impact, and I see that there's two sort of that has sort of a twofold definition. One being that we wanted to have impact on the project, that we don't want to give, don't tend to give money to someone who has $100,000 budget, and this is one drop in the bucket for that. We want to feel like our $1,000 is going to have real impact on their ability to do it. Conversely, we're actually looking for projects that we think are going to have impact in their community.
And sometimes that does mean a larger budget, right?
Yes. So, but we're not. If for example, there are people who come to us for looking to put up a website or go and travel or whatnot. And for us, if we don't feel like if that doesn't seem like it's going to have impact for anybody else beyond themselves, we don't tend to give a grant for that. And so I guess I think. Looking at my own work, I think there's a similar theme there of that I like to have to produce work that I think will have impact, and impact on people, impact on the industry, impact on the artists, and that they're also leaving saying this was a really impactful experience for me as an individual. I produced this piece last October called "I'm Harvey Milk" that was about Harvey Milk, the LGBT politician, and what was most impactful for me was that we had Kristen Chenoweth was in it, and she was very moved by the whole experience. But sort of on the flip side, we were rehearsing at a church on the Upper East Side, and the janitor, who was a man in his middle age, I don't think was at all in the arts, probably doesn't see a show, has probably never seen a show on Broadway. And at the end of our 5 days of rehearsal at the space, he came up to me and said, "I just feel very lucky to have been able to listen and experience this music for the past week."
Wow.
And that the piece was having impact. This wasn't even the performance; this was literally just rehearsals, and that it was having impact on everybody from the janitor at the space to Kristen Chenoweth, who is a huge, worldwide celebrity. That was really meaningful for me. That I knew that this piece was having that type of impact on such a wide scale.
Wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds just incredible. I could ask you questions about being a producer like all day long, but I love the tie-in.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, he's talking about here we are. It's the Awesomeness Foundation grant giver. Oh wait, also our Awesome Foundation, but also actually this is a producer of many amazing pieces of work. And I could just kind of pick your brain all day.
I'm happy to keep chatting.
Well, I do have kind of a question that I also try to ask everybody, which is, do you have any books that you recommend consistently, or that really affected you, that you kind of carried them with you, metaphorically speaking, not like they're in your bag, but.
Yeah, I've been bad recently about reading books. I tend to not give myself the time to read as much as I really like to, and then whenever I go to finally go on a vacation and remember that
reading is there.
And I love it. How much I love it. I used to read so much when I was younger. One of the books that has always impacted me was the book East of Eden by John Steinbeck.
Okay.
And I think it impacted me a lot just because there was this character struggling so much with being good and doing good and fate and what is in our power and what is sort of how much of us as an individual is sort of fated by our genes and by our circumstances, and how much of that are we in power of. And the central character, or one of the central characters, struggles with that throughout the whole book. And that as a concept has always really resonated with me and resonated with me. And the takeaway for me from the book was so much of that is you have so much control over who you are, what you do, and how you spend your time and energy, and what kind of impact you have. And that really stuck with me for many, many years.
Just that sense of personal agency over
your
time.
That's so important to believe that about yourself. I don't know, who knows whether it's real or not,
Yeah.
But
as an approach, it's pretty useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Books that have impacted me. There's a book, I'm having a blank on what it's called, all about Joe Papp, who was he started the Public Theater, which is down by NYU in Astor Place, which has been a theater institution in New York since the 60s, I believe is when he started it. And he started Shakespeare in the Park, Free Shakespeare in Central Park. And he was a really incredible man and did really remarkable political, visceral theatrical work, and was an incredible producer and kind of arts entrepreneur, and the work that he did, the type of work that he did. One of the stories that always resonated with me from that book was that when he started doing Shakespeare in the Park, they were working with some actors many actors who went on to have this huge film. I mean, it was the great actors of our time, and they would do Shakespeare in Central Park, and they would do it in the Bronx, they would do it in Queens, they would do it in areas that had no access to theater in general. Had never seen Shakespeare, hadn't read it in their high schools. Were totally sort of indoctrinated into the theater world, and talking about people watching these audiences totally enraptured with the work on stage, the Shakespeare, and doing Romeo and Juliet, and doing Comedy of Errors, and all these different works, and hearing that these people, that sort of the good work resonates, that don't think about sort of your preconceived notions of the work or what you think might have impact to it. Just do the really good work, and people will resonate, and that will resonate with you beyond sort of your concepts of who that can resonate with. And I think that I often get questioned in the theater world that we tend to do work for wealthy white people, and I'm not personally interested in doing work for wealthy white people. I don't. Unfortunately, they're the people who spend their money here, and they're the people who tend to be patrons of the work, but that the work does resonate beyond that. And I think knowing that even if it doesn't, that we that aren't doing work that necessarily is resonating with other people, that it's possible to do that work. And that's always been very inspiring to me as an individual, to know that the work can resonate, and it's just about finding the ways to reach that audience.
Yeah. Okay. I completely just got wrapped up in your, the whole schema behind how are you going to go about making work that can engage a broader audience? How are you going to support that work? How are you going to maintain the donorship of a certain, group of people that are pretty consistent with giving, and then also, keep that cultural voice more diversified and more relevant and resonant for a broader audience?
Right. It's a very tricky...
That is a hard slope.
Problem, and one I don't at all have answers to.
But you're gaining experience in,
Right, and asking the questions.
Yeah.
And Grant, the role of grants in the arts world has always been sort of interesting to me. I think it's underestimated how much of an impact it really has on what the type of work that gets done. I actually, the show that I produced called Debutante, that was written by these two women, I got into a bit of a fight with this gentleman who was interested in donating to them. He was a big supporter of the writers, and he had told her, I'm really interested in your work, let me know what next project you're working on, and we sent him the script, and he said, I don't know if this is the right project for me, I'm not sure it's right. And I knew this gentleman had a lot of money, and I said, well, you can't pick and choose. If you want to support the artist, support the artist. You can't support just the work, because then you're really controlling the type of work that gets produced.
Right. Who is the founder of, who is the originator of this cultural voice? Is it you with the money, or is it the artist with the impetus?
And if you really believe in this artist, you need to support their work regardless. And that was one of the other things that Joe Papp talks about in his book, is that if he believes in an artist, he supports the work regardless of what the work is. He will produce. There were certain artists that he said, whatever you come to me with, I will produce it. And that kind of support of artists is really important, or else you don't really get the full breadth of their work. You're limiting the type of work that's going to get done, and inevitably you're kind of killing the buds of it, and so you never see the flowers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that if you believe that this is going to bear fruit, you have to just keep watering it every day and be patient with it. But if you're not going to give it water when there's no fruit, you're never going to see the fruit.
Right.
And so there's that kind of chicken and egg problem, and I got into a bit of a fight with him over it. Not a fight,
Did
but
you
I would
win?
just...
I'm like, I want to
It's
win.
funny enough, I know it had an impact on him. He didn't really end up donating very much, which I was a little frustrated with, but he also, I know, continues to bring that up to me and to other people, that this conversation that we had. So clearly I hit some sort of nerve, even if it didn't necessarily have short-term consequence. I think long-term, hopefully, it has affected sometimes his donating habits. Or at least the awareness of it. I think that oftentimes there's been interesting. There was an article recently called a Medium article or post or blog that was called I Racist, that was just talking about, one of the problems with talking about dealing with racism and our inability to move past it in America is that we just can't, that white people won't talk about it.
Right.
And that they're very scared of it, that they're like, don't want to be offended. I'm not a racist, it's not I, it's somebody else. And this idea of that racists are bad people, and therefore that if you're a good person, you're not a racist, and that I can't be a good person and be racist. And so again, linking it back, I just think oftentimes you just need to have the conversations, you need to talk about it, and that having those conversations is how you change the conversation, how you change
how it evolves.
people, how
you
it
can't
evolves.
evolve a conversation without actually having it.
Right, and then often those things
are.
are long, you kind of have to think long game. You can't expect that you're going to have one conversation that's going to change somebody.
Look, we had a conversation, I'm no longer a racist, it's over.
Exactly.
Oh my god, racism just ended right now.
Or that, we have one conversation about, diversity in the arts, and all of a sudden, it's over and we're done.
Solved. Well, that was an easy conversation.
Right, exactly. And there's a new show that's opening on Broadway called Hamilton. It's been very sort of buzzed about in the theater world, and I think beyond. It's the story of Alexander Hamilton, told through the voice of Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's a really amazing musical theater writer, but he's primarily works in the hip-hop rap idiom, and so the whole show is like a hip-hop musical, but he, as a, I believe he's Mexican-American, though I might be misquoting that, is playing Alexander Hamilton. The entire cast, George Washington is played by a black man, and the whole cast is there's maybe 2 white people in it, but it's the story of our founding fathers. But it's been very talked about as how revolutionary this is, that we can tell a story about a historic figure without necessarily casting somebody, of exactly the racial, it doesn't necessarily be racially accurate.
Do they still cast along gender lines?
They do, I believe. I haven't actually been able to see it. It is very hard to get the tickets for. But I believe it's across gender lines, but not necessarily across race. But that being said, there are numbers of shows on Broadway that are still, they just announced cast for one show that is an all-white cast. And, as much as we've made progress, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Right, absolutely. So having been, not only having gone looking for money and trying to get it in grant writing, I imagine quite a bit, but also being a grant giver and a donor, do you have any main pieces of advice that just across the board, they always come through as truisms about just what a strong application or what a strong, plea for money looks like? What should always be included, what should never be, or what seems compelling to you when you're looking at it from either side of that?
I think clarity of what you are doing, who are you, and what is the project that you're wanting us to help fund. Oftentimes I feel like there's sort of this whole background on, the ideological concept of what this is, and sometimes the actual tangibles of this is what the project is, get kind of lost in the theory.
Yeah.
And so really finding a clear, concise way, one of the things that we've joked about adding to our applications is, give us the tweet of your project.
Oh my god, I was just going to say, were you considering 140 characters
or
less?
140, which is just, obviously you're not going to capture everything,
elevator
but
pitch, just the quick.
Right, the quick. Yeah. What is the 140 character version of it? Just for your sake, to help you really condense exactly what it is. Because all of a sudden, when you only have 140 characters, you are forced to figure out, it's A plus B equals C. Whatever that thing is.
Yeah, I talk with artists a lot about what is your elevator pitch. When someone says, "Oh, you're an artist, so what is your work about?" Do you have 1 to 3 sentences that just hit it?
Right.
And if you don't, then you're wasting every opportunity, and you're actually in some way you're robbing that curious person the opportunity to get what they were seeking, which is just to know what you're doing. I mean, that's what we're all here to do, right? Totally. Is to share what it is that we're about. Totally. And if you don't have that way of communicating it, you're kind of taking it from the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So clarity.
Clarity.
That's one, for sure.
I have to think about this. I think.
Well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm drawing blanks here. I don't know if you can hear. I think also clarity as an artist. I think giving yourself some focus of what you're doing and what you're about. I think a lot of having looked at a lot of mission statements for theater companies and arts companies, oftentimes they're trying to sort of capture everything in the world in their mission statement rather than really giving focus to their work. And I think
to just that particular, what their work is, what that project is, what you're going to get out of it, what it's going to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess sort of a little bit broader, beyond the sort of application of it all. The reality is that a lot of these things happen with relationships. Getting money, anything that's ever happened to me, and anything that, any opportunities that have come my way are because I've built and nurtured relationships. And so I think thinking about how you're going to go about and nurture and build relationships for the sake of the relationships, not necessarily for the sake of what might come of it, I think often sort of brings its own benefits. I guess that's more.
And those are long-term, long leads.
Long leads,
yeah,
right? Absolutely.
So not short-term, immediate. Let's just figure out what I can get out of this thing right now.
Right. How do you really focus on the person and the relationship? Always putting the relationship first. But I think that often, in terms of donors, are sort of more, or even with grants. I think a lot of times, oftentimes, the grant organization takes a little while to get to know you and learn about you, so they need that. They need to get to know you as an artist, and so oftentimes it takes that time and sort of respecting that process, respecting that they're not going to necessarily look at your application and say,
done.
Oh, done. Yes, of course. I don't know who you are, but this is great. That oftentimes you need to get to know them, and they need to get to know your work, and then that the benefits of that often come later.
Yeah. Chickens go home to roost maybe another fiscal year.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, just being in it for the long term. That's really what it's about.
Yeah.
I guess if there's any one profession, any one industry at all, no matter, and I would say arts very, very broadly, that's the one that is the most long game oriented I can imagine. I mean, even if you're going to go and be a doctor, you're going to have this long residency, it's going to take a long time, you're going to have medical school, but there is a clear end time that it is now over, and now here is your job.
Right,
that is not true in the arts. It's so perpetual, and it is so long term, if at all. There is no short term to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like we are Awesome Foundation is such an unusual granting organization. I don't know that what we look for is probably very different than what a conventional granting organization.
Yeah, well, and that's the contrast that you're able to see on both sides.
Right.
An applicant and then as a donor. So it's really interesting. You're in a really great position.
Yeah, there was something from an article I read a couple years ago from the current executive director of the Knight Foundation, which is a big granting organization for journalism-related ventures. And he was talking about how granting, the application dictates the applicants in a certain sense.
Yes, it steers them, it funnels them.
It steers them into a certain state so that the more questions you ask, the more limited the types of applications you're going to get. And he said, now our applications are, I think, 2 questions. Who are you? What do you want? In a certain sense, because it really gives the potential grantees the opportunity to sort of show themselves in their own light.
They get to steer their own ship, right? Yeah.
And really, kind of, maybe the best way for them to show it is in a sentence. Maybe the best way to tell you about the project is 4 pages, and sort of trusting that they know the best way to show them, and trying to open yourself up to the diversity of types of applications.
Yeah.
And that always really resonated with me. And one of the things I love about the Awesome Foundation grants is that our application process is really simple. We just
you might add another question, which is, what is your tweet? But aside from that,
exactly. Well, I think the way that our current system works, we'd have to actually remove a question or add that question.
Oh,
so it's not, the number of questions isn't going up. It's a matter of prioritizing questions on our end, and that's it's always evolving on our end to try to help. It's a part of our. This comes up a lot in. I was working in casting for a little bit, but the casting directors are always, they want you to succeed.
Right.
In a certain sense, the grant. I guess going back to your question of, kind of grants. Suggestions or guidelines, but the people reading it want you to be good. They want you to see. They want to give you the money in a certain sense, and it's just about finding a way to meet what they're looking for. But I think it's important to kind of go in with it with a mindset of like, these people want to give me money.
Right.
You know, and you're trying to help them give you money.
Right. I want to make this as easy for them to give me this money
right,
as possible.
You know, they're not like trying to keep people away. They're the whole thing is they're there to give you money.
Yeah.
And so it's just about trying to figure out how to finagle the rules and of the road.
And know what those rules are.
Yeah.
Well, so one last question is there are so many kind of misconceptions or just assumptions that people have about creative folks and versus normal people or whatever. You know, there's certain times it happens and you have to, you know, the clock strikes midnight and suddenly you become a werewolf or you become an artist. I don't know, something like that. So are you more of a morning person or a late night person, and when do you feel like your peak hours are?
It's funny, I used to be a very much night person, and a couple of years ago, all of a sudden my body clock just switched. And I started waking up at 6:30 in the morning, and it was a total shift. I am now much more of a morning person. I think my peak hours are like 11 to 2. You know, I kind of have gotten into the groove of things. I've gotten, you know, checked my Facebook and Twitter and sort of like, cool, nothing else is going on there, and can move on to actually just diving into work and getting into a zone. But I feel like it's constantly evolving for myself. You know, I work from home often or from coffee shops, and so I'm constantly trying to tinker with my work methods to get more efficient, to feel better about my productivity levels and feeling like, wow, I really had a good day. And just trying to figure out when that does happen, why that happened.
Yes.
I'm very much still trying to figure that out.
Well, so far we've got some good hours. Well, I just want to thank you so much for making the time for this. This was a great conversation. I had no idea it would go so many great places. So where can people find out more about you and your work and the Awesome Foundation? Are there websites? Right.
The Awesome Foundation, you can find out more at www.awesomefoundation.org. And you can find out more about me. I have an About Me page, which is about.me/Robb Nanus, ROBB, 2 B's, and like Nancy, ANUS.
All right. Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Of course. Thanks so much, Monica.